Multi-factor authentication is a security method that requires user to provide at least two different forms of identification to access a system. In this video, we are going to build a two-factor authentication system using Node.js, Express, Speakeasy, and Passport.js. In this project, we will learn how to secure user accounts with 2FA, improving the overall security of our application. So, if this sounds interesting, then stick around. Also, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. So let's get started. Alright guys, so before we jump to the Visual Studio Code and start building our project, we will just go through some slides and understand how our project structure will look like and what is two-factor authentication that we are building here and what are the different routes that we have to build. So we will first start with our application structure. So this is how our application structure will look like. We have a user client, and this user client is going to send a request and get a response from our server. And this will be an Express server where we will be having our app, which will be the main entry point of our application. Now this app will take the configs, which are the Passport.js config, which we are going to use it for the authentication purpose. We will come to that later on. And then there will be the database config where we will be establishing the connection of database with MongoDB. Now this app will also contain all our routes. So we are going to have the auth routes and the multi-factor authentication routes. And these routes will have all the logic into their controller, which will be having a model, which we are going to create the user model with the help of Mongoose schema, and then we are going to store the data in the MongoDB database. So this is a rough idea how our application is going to be structured. Now we are going to take a larger look on the routes, that what are the routes that we have to build. So here you will see that we have the routes, and we are going to have the 4 auth routes, which will be the register a user, login a user, log out a user, and check the status of a user, whether a user is authenticated or not authenticated. And for this login part, we are going to use the Passport.js, and we are going to use the strategy for the Passport.js as local strategy. So when we will implement it, we will see what is Passport.js and how we are going to integrate it into our project to handle the authentication part. For setting up of the multi-factor authentication, we are going to have 3 routes, which will be the setup. We are going to set up the multi-factor authentication into a project. Then we will verify the token. And the third one is if we want to reset our MFA, then we can also reset it and then set it again. And for the setup and the verify, we are going to use a Speakeasy, which is a Node module, which will help us to generate the time-based OTP. So we will see what is this dependency is and how we use it into the project to set up MFA. Then let's understand how this multi-factor authentication looks like. So here you will see that we are going to have our user, which is going to log in using the username and the password. And when the username and the password matches, that will be the first factor authentication. Once the username and the password match, we will need another authentication, which will be the second factor authentication, or we say MFA, multi-factor authentication, that will have a authenticator app on the user's device. And there will be a time-based OTP which is going to be sent. So whenever we have this time-based OTP, we will need the OTP also to verify the user. So that means to enhance the security of the user, we are having these 2 steps in order the user get authenticated and then access our resources on the server. So this is how, in a nutshell, the multi-factor authentication is. And we are going to build the project. We are going to start for the backend project first, build the backend APIs. So I will go to the Visual Studio Code, and in the Visual Studio Code, you will see that I have an empty folder, which is the React Node.js multi-factor project. Now, the first part, what we have to do is we go to the terminal. So I will just open my terminal, and inside the terminal, we are going to init our package.json file. So let's have npm init -y, and this is going to initialize our package.json file. So I'm going to hit enter, and yes, we have the package.json file. Now in the last project, in the role-based access control, we were using the common.js to import. Now in this case, we are going to use the module ES6 module. So what we are going to do is I'm going to use the type here, and I'm going to use the type as module so that we can use the import statement instead of require. So I will have the module here. Okay, in the scripts, we need to add the scripts as well, I will have the dev here, and then I'm going to add a script here. Right now we don't have any script here. Now we will start our project by installing all the dependencies that we need for this project. So let's do that one by one. So I will clear the console. Now I'm going to do npm install. The first we need to install is the express. So we are going to have the express. I will use npm I to install it. Now after express, we will need the .env so that we can fetch the values from our .env file. So I will have the .env. Then we will also need to have the passport. So I will use the passport. We will go to the passport.js official doc and we will see that what the passport.js is and what capability it provides. With the passport, we will also need the passport local. So I will have the passport local, and this is basically the local strategy which we are going to see again. Then we will also need to have the CORS. We are going to use the backend APIs. Once we build the backend project, we are going to make use of these APIs and call them from our front-end React application. So that's why we will need the CORS, so that it will enable the cross origin request. Then we will also need the bcrypt, so that whenever we register a user, we can hash the password. So we will not store the raw password. So let's have the bcrypt.js. Then we will also need a JWT token so that we can pass the JSON web token to the user once the user is authenticated. So I will have the JSON web token. We will also need the Mongoose. So I will use the Mongoose. We will also need the Speakeasy. So I will also show what the Speakeasy is about. And then we will need a QR code. So I will use the QR code library, and we will need the Mongoose. So these all are the dependencies that we are going to require for this project. Let's go one by one. So we have the Express. We all know Express is used as a framework for Node.js to build the REST APIs. We have a .env to fetch the values from our .env file. Passport and passport local we skip for now. CORS, we know that we use CORS in order to allow our APIs to be accessible from a different origin. bcrypt.js, we have used it a couple of times in the past. We need this to hash our raw password. JSON web token, in order to handle the authentication part, we will provide the token to the user. Speakeasy, I'm going to talk it about later on when we talk about the passport.js. QR code, it's a simple library which is going to generate a base64 string whenever you pass some data to it. So it's going to generate a base64 string which you can just decode it and get a QR code. Then Mongoose, we use the Mongoose just for the user schema, and then have our CRUD operation into MongoDB. One more dependency we will need, that is the express session, because we are going to use the passport.js and passport local. So it works very well whenever we need to create or establish a session. So let's have the express session, which is going to generate a session ID for us whenever we have the user authentication established. So I'm going to hit enter, and I will first let all the dependencies get installed. So I'm going to hit enter. All right, so now we see that all the dependencies have been installed here. Now we will also use the nodemon. So I will have the npm install nodemon -save -dev. I want it as a dev dependency. So here I will have the nodemon. So the nodemon is also installed as a dev dependency. Now we are having this index.js, which is our main entry point. So what I will do is I will go and create the folder structure. So I will go here, create a source. So this is the source. Along with that, we also create a .env file which will hold our environment variables. Now in the source file, I'm going to create the index.js. All right, and now since we have the index.js here, we can create our simple express server. But before we go and do our express server, I want to give you a bit of idea about the passport.js and the Speakeasy. So let's go to the browser and let's check. So if I go to the browser, you will see that this is the passport.org. It's a simple middleware which provides authentication for the Node.js, and you can use different strategies. They have around 500 plus strategies. So if I click on view all strategies, then you will see that there are so many strategies. If you want to integrate it with the Facebook authentication, then you can just use passport Facebook. For us, we are going to use passport-local because we are just going to use the username and the password in order to authenticate the user. So this is how we are going to use it. We have already installed the passport local, and it's a middleware. So this is what we are going to make use of, passport.use, and there will be our strategy. So we will just make use of it when we are actually writing our application. And the another package which we are using is I will just go to the npm and Speakeasy. So This is a Speakeasy. It provides a two-factor authentication for our Node.js application. So Speakeasy, it is the one-time password generator, and it is basically used if you want to include MFA into your project. It also supports the Google Authenticator or any other two-factor authentication device. So there are a couple of authenticator apps like Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, Authy. So any of the authenticator which you have it on your device, you can just use it and Speakeasy will work with them. So the simple way, we need to install it, and then in order to use it, what we need to do is it will first help us to generate a secret, and then that secret will be shown in the form of a QR code which a user can scan from their authenticator app. And then when the authenticator app reads the QR code, it is going to show you a token which is a time-based, but you don't have to worry about it. We are going to implement each and every step in a manner which will make you to understand these two-factor authentication very easy. So for now, you just need to understand that Speakeasy is an NPM package that we are using to generate our two-factor authentication token and everything. And Passport is a library that we are going to use in order to have authentication in our project. And Passport local is our authentication strategy, because we are going to use the username and the password in order to authenticate the user. Maybe let's go back to our Visual Studio Code. All right, now we have this index.js, and in the index.js, we can simply start by creating a simple Express application. So I will go here, I will have the import Express from Express, then I will also import the session from Express session, then I will import the passport, then I will also import the .env. So let's have the .env from .env. Then I will import the cors. So let's have the cors from cors. All right, I missed the quotes here, so I will just put the quotes here. So we have imported the dependencies that we need. Now let's create a simple Express app. So before that, I will just use the .env.config so that it can fetch the values from our .env file. Now let's create the constant app, and we will have our Express app. Now on this Express app, what we can do is we can attach the middlewares that we need. So I will have the middlewares, and the first middleware we need is the app.use, and we are going to have the Express JSON. So I will have the JSON which is coming from the Express, and here we can also pass the limit. So I want to limit my data transfer, which should be 100 MB of JSON data. All right, then I will also make use of app.use and URL encoder. So we will have the URL encoder, and here also we can have the limit as 100 MB, and we can have extend as true. And we are using these two middlewares in order to know our Express application that we can get an incoming request as in the form of a JSON, or it can be in the form of a URL encoded payloads. All right, so we have these two middlewares. Now we will have a routes here. For now, I will just use it as routes, and I'm not going to provide any routes. Now after the routes, we will just listen the app. So I will have the listen our app. So let's create a constant port, and we are going to use the port from our .env. So let's give a port here. So I will have the port as 7001. All right, so now we can go back here, and we can just take the port value as process.env.port, and if this value is not available, then we can assign 7002. Once we have this, we can just listen to our app. So app.listen is a method, and we provide the port, and this also gives us a callback. So we can have a callback here, and let's have console.log. We can use the backticks, and we can have server is running on port, and we can just define our port. So this is way we will know that our server is running on the port. So I will have the port. All right, now we want to give a try. If we want to check the server is running on the port 7001 or not, what we can do is we can go to the package JSON file, and here we can have the node mon source index.js. So I will just change this to source, and now we can give a try. So what I will do is I will have npm run dev, and we see that the server is running on the port 7001. All right, so we have created a simple Express server here. All right, so now next what we will do is we are going to use the cors as well. So let's have here middleware. I'm going to create a constant. I will have the cors option, and this cors option will be an object, and inside this I'm going to use origin, and here I can just define all my origins that I want to allow. So for now, I will just use http://localhost 3001. And I assume that our React application will run on localhost 3001. If you have a different port, you can just put it in the origin. Now, along with that, I will also use the credentials as true. So whenever we have this cross origin, we will also need to have this credentials as true. With the help of this credentials true, it will allow us that whenever we get a request from 3001, it is also going to forward us the cookies, which are the part of credentials. So that's why we have this credential as true. Okay, now we can make use of it. So what I will do is I will have the app use, and we can just use the course here, and then we can provide our course option. So I will have the course option. Okay, now we will establish the session as well. So I will have the app.use, and in use we are going to have the session. So this is basically the express session. So if we go to our npm and if we search for the express session, then we will be able to understand more about this package. So here you can see everything about the session. It will allow us to create the session, and then we can also provide some options. Whenever a session is established, a session ID is created and the session data is stored on the server side. I will show you once we create the session, and then when we have the APIs, I will show you in the cookies how we have the session ID. All right, so we are going to have the session ID, and then here we can provide some options. So for that, what I will do is first in the session, you always have a session secret, which helps you to identify the established session. So what I will do is I will have the secret here, and here we have to give some meaningful secret name. So what I will do is I will go here and I can have a session secret, and this I can just equals to maybe my session secret. But when you create a real project, it should be some meaningful name, so that any hacker or anyone cannot just decode your human readable session secret and then just intercept your request. So here what I will do is I can fetch this process.env.session_secret, and if there is no secret, then I will just simply use a secret. All right, so we have this, and then along with this we need to provide two more properties. So one, you will also see it here, the undefined save option. We have to define the resave option. So let's have the resave, and we have to provide the resave as false. And basically this resave are whenever you create a session, the session data is stored in the local express memory. And there I have one more property, which is save uninitialized. So that also I have to make it false. So you will see that if you hover on it, you can read it that forces a session that is uninitialized to be saved to the store. And here along with this, you can also provide more options, like we are generating cookies and having a session ID. So we can also provide the max age. We want it to be stored on a user browser. So I will have, maybe I will store it for 1 hour. So we can use 60,000, and if I multiply it by 60, then it becomes 1 hour. All right, so we have added the session part. So now this is done. We will also need to initialize our passport for the project. So for that, I will just go here and I will use app.use, and we will have the passport.initialize. So this is going to initialize the passport into our project. And then what we need is we will also need to use the session. So we have passport.session. Since we are using the express session, so we will be using passport.session. So this is how we initialize the passport.js into our project. All right, so we are done with our index.js. Now what we can do is we can just create our folder structure for our project. So first what I will do is I'm going to create the routes folder, which is going to contain the routes. After the routes, I'm going to create the controllers, which will contain all the logic of our routes. Then we are going to create the models, which is going to contain our user model. And last, we will need the configs, which will have our passport config and the database connection. So these are the folders that we will require for our project. We can just start by connecting the database first. So I will go here and I will create a file as dbconnect.js. Oops, it should be dbconnect.js. And to have the database connection established, what we will need to do is import connect, and this connect will coming from the Mongoose. Then I can simply create a constant db connect, and this is going to be equals to an arrow function. All right, and then we can just export it. So I will have the export default db connect. Okay, now we are going to use the async. So I will have the async here, and let's write the connection to the database. So I'm going to have a try catch block, so that if there is an error, we can catch the error. All right, and in the error, what I will do is I will have the console.log, and here I will have database connection failed, and we can just log our error, whatever the error we get. So I will have the error. Okay, and if there is an error, we will use the process exit and we will exit the program. So I will have process exit 1. Now in the try part, what we will do is let's have the MongoDB connection, and this will be equals to the await. We are going to use the connect function from the Mongoose. So let's have the connect, and we are going to pass our connection string. So our connection string is process.env. We need to have a connection string. So let's go to the browser and let's have the MongoDB Atlas. So here you will see that I already logged into the MongoDB Atlas, where you can create different projects. I have already created a project as React Node 2FA. Okay, so you can just click on the create project and then you can build your project here. Since I already have a project, I will just go to the project, and here you will see that if I want to connect to the project, I have a connect new. So I'm going to click on the connect new, and here you will see that you have this connection strings. So what you can do is you can just copy. So I will copy it. I will go to my project, and here I'm going to go and have connection string, and this will be equals to the string that we have just copied. So this is how it looks like. Now in this, you just have to replace your password. So this is a user you create whenever you create the project in the MongoDB Atlas. So there you also need to provide a username and a password, and you can just use your own username and a password to have this connection string. I will also create one more environment variable, which will be the JWT secret, because we are also going to use the JSON web token. So I will have my JWT secret as my JWT secret. So these are the env variables that we are going to use it for our project. So we have the connection string. So I will use the connection underscore string here, and this is going to help me to connect to my database. Now once I have this MongoDB connection here, I can simply do a console log so that I can log something and I know that my connection is established. So here what we can do is we can have database connected, and then we can also use some value here. So I can use here MongoDB connection dot host, and it is going to tell me that what host it is connected. All right, so now I am done with the db connect function, and what we can do is we can go to the index and we can just import it. So what I will do is I will go here, I will have the db connect, and since we are getting this app is crashed now, we are using the ES module. So what I will have to do is I have to use .js, or I have to create my files as .mjs. Now after doing the .js, you will see that the application is running again. Okay, so let's call the db connect function so that we will see that our database is getting connected. So I will go here, I will have db connect. All right, and I will save it, and you see that as soon as I save it, you see the database is connected, and this is our cluster name and this is our host. All right, so the database part is done. With this database part, I would also like to create the model that we are going to use it for this project. So let's go to the model, and in the model what I will do is I'm going to create a model as user.js. all right, and in the user.js, let's have import Mongoose, and with this import Mongoose, we are going to create the user schema. So let's have the user schema, and this will be equals to the new mongoose.schema. So we are going to create the user schema that we want. All right, we are going to have this object, and the first part we need is we need to have a username. So this username will be an object. It's going to have a type as string. We are going to use it as a required property because we need it, and then we will also keep it as a unique property. So we are going to have the unique as true. Okay, now with this we will also need a password. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here. I'm going to change this to password. Type will be string, required will be true, and I don't need this as a unique property. Okay, along with this, I will also need a flag which is going to allow me to understand that whether this user has MFA activated or not activated. So I will have is MFA active, and this is going to have a type as boolean, and it is going to have a require as true. Required as false. Initially, whenever we register a user, the MFA will be not active, so it will be a false. And along with that, we will also need to have one more property which will be two-factor secret. So whenever we are going to create a two-factor authentication for a particular user, we are going to generate a secret using the Speakeasy. So we also have to store that secret with the user object. So for now, you will just see that we are going to have this property, and we are keeping this property as a string, and this property is not required because this property will get value only whenever the MFA is activated. So we are going to keep it as a not required property. All right, and along with this, we are also going to use the timestamp. So let's have the timestamp as true. So it is going to put the timestamps. All right. Now, once we have this, what we will do is I'm going to use the constant user is equals to mongoose dot model, and then we are going to pass the user here, and then we have to pass our user schema. So let's have the user schema. I will go here and we will just make it as camel case. So we have the user schema. I'm going to copy. I'm going to put the user schema here. Now we can just use the export default. We can export this user. So we have export default user. So this is how our model will look like. We are going to have the username. We are going to have the password. We will have the is MFA active, and then we have the two-factor secret, and then we have the timestamps. So we are done with our model. So this part is done. I will just close it. We are also done with the database connection. I will close it. Here we are almost done with all our middlewares and configuration. We will also need to provide the routes. So now let's work on the routes part. So I'm going to go here. I will create a file which will be authroutes.js. All right. I will import the router from the express. Then import the passport. Now we have imported the router and the passport. Let's create the router. So I will have the constant router is equals to the router. Okay. And then we can create our routes. So I will have the registration route. I will have the login route. Then I will have the AuthStatus route, which is going to provide us the status of our user, whether the user is authenticated or not. Then I will have our logout route. All right. So this was the first part where we are going to have the 4 routes for the auth purpose. So for that, let's have the routes here. I'm going to use the router.post, and this will be /register, and I'm going to have a register function here. So I have to create the register function, which will be created in the controller parts where all the logic of the registration will be there. All right, I will copy, I will put it here, and I will change this to login, and I will also change this to login. Okay, now for the third, which is the auth status, I'm going to copy here and I'm going to copy here, and the auth status would be a get API. So we will just get the auth status. So I will going to have here as status, and then I will have the auth status here. And the last part, which is the logout. So I'm going to have the logout, and here I will have the logout function. All right. So we have all these 4 routes. Now we are also going to create the MFA routes as well now. So I will copy, and then I will have it here. So I will copy more. Okay. So the first MFA route we wanted is the two-factor authentication setup. So this will be 2FA setup, which will be a post route. And here the path will be 2FA/setup. And here we are going to create the function. Our function will be setup 2FA. All right. The next route will be the verify token. So whenever you have set up the 2FA, you are going to get a token, the time-based OTP, which you want to verify. So I'm going to have here verify, and this will be 2FA/verify, and the function will be verify 2FA. Then the third one is to reset our two-factor authentication. So I'm going to have the reset. This will be also be a post. This will be 2FA/reset, and then here I'm going to have the reset 2FA. So we have all these routes available here and all the functions we need to create. So now let's export the router. So I will have the export default, and I'm going to have the router here. All right. So we have this. Now we can just import the router into our index.js. So I will go to the index.js, and here I will have the app.use, and here we will have the API/auth, and then we can just provide the auth routes. All right, we need to import this auth route. So let's go and import it. So I'm going to go here, and here I can import. So I will have import auth routes, and this will be coming from the routes/authroutes.js. Okay, so I have imported it, but I still see that I have an error, and it says that register is not defined on the routes line number 7. So if I go here, if I go to line number 7, and yes, we haven't defined the register yet. So we can go to the controller and just define all the functions so that we don't get these errors. So I will go to the controller part, and in the controller, let's create the file first. So I will have the auth controller.js. Okay, now here we can create all the functions. So first let's have export constant constant register, which will be equals to a arrow function. All right, and I will have the async here. Okay, now I will just copy and I will put it for all the others as well. So next will be the login, then we are going to have the status, or maybe it's the auth status. So I will have the auth status, then we are going to have the logout. After logout, we are going to have the setup Two-FA, then we are going to have the verify Two-FA, and the last one is the reset Two-FA. So I'm going to have the reset Two-FA. All right, so now we have all the functions available here. We can just import them in our route. So I will have the import, and I'm going to import the register, login, logout, auth status, setup Two-FA, verify Two-FA, and reset Two-FA. And now we should not be able to get the error. So if I go and check, then we still get an error. This will be because we have to make it at .js. Okay, so now the application is back and it's working fine. So we have written all the routes, and we also have the corresponding functions into the auth controller for our routes. And in the register, what we will do is we are going to get the request and the response. So I will have the request, response, and I will just copy them in all other functions as well. So I will copy, put it here, here, here. So first let's have the try catch block in order to have register a user. If it is an error, we are going to have a response status as 500, and then we are going to give a JSON object, and we are going to have the error. So let's have the error here, and we are going to have the error as error registering user, and then we are going to give the message, and here the message will be the error that we have got. So let's have the error here. All right, so this is what our catch block looks like. In case of an error, we are going to have the status code as 500 and a JSON data with an error message, and then whatever the actual message we get. Okay, in the try block, what we are going to do is first let's get the destructure from the request body. We get the username and the password. So I will have a constant. I get the username, I get the password. All right, this will be coming from the request body. So let's have it from the request body. Now once I have that, I want to hash my password. So let's have the hashed password, and this will be equals to the await, and we are going to use the bcrypt library. So let's import that. So I'm going to go here, import bcrypt from bcrypt.js. Okay, we can use the bcrypt now, and here on the bcrypt we have the hash function. So let's have the hash function, and we pass the password. So this is the raw password, and we need to pass the salt value in order to hash this password. Okay, we have the hash password. Now let's create a new user. So we have a new user, and this new user will be of type user. So we can just import the user. So I will go here. I will have a import user from models/user.js. Okay, we have the user, and this new user will be having a username. Yes, we have the username. This will be having a password, and this password will be the hashed password. This user will also have the isMFA. So I'm going to have the isMFA active, and the value would be false. All right, so we have created the new user, and you remember that there is one more field, which is the two-factor secret, which we did not provide it as required. So that's why we are not providing it here, but all these three fields are required. Now once you create this, you can actually log this user as well. So I will have the log user, new user, and we can just define here as a new user. So we can log the user. Okay, now we can just save this user into the database. So I will use the await and new user dot save function. So we have a save function on it, and this is going to save the user. Now if we want to just try this, we can go and try. I can go to the Thunder client here, create a new request. I can just remove this. I will have the http:// localhost, and I can just use here as register. Okay, this will be a post API. We can go to the body, and in the body we can define the user name. I will just minimize this. The username could be I will have the username as Depesh, and then I will also have the password, and I will provide the password as 123456. Now I can send the request, and we can just check. So if I send a request, what I see is this was the user, and this is the new object and everything, but we don't see any response. So I will cancel the request. So I'm not able to cancel the request. What I will do is I will just kill my server. All right, and I will rerun the server. Okay, and the mistake we did is we actually created a new user. We also did it await, but we don't know what is the next statement here. We need to provide the response back to the user. So let's have a response status as 201, and we also provide a JSON response to the user. That will be a message, and we provide user registered successfully. So we have this user registered successfully. Now we can give a try. So before that, we go to the database and see the user is created or not. So I go back here, I go to the browse collection, and if I go to the users, then we see that the user was actually created at updated at MFA false. I will just increase the font here. So now what I will do is I will just delete it so that I can recreate the user. So I will delete this and the user is deleted. Let's go and let's recreate it. If I go here, if I pass the same values and send a request, then we see the user registered successfully, and we can go and verify that if a user is created or not. I will just refresh it and we have the user is created. So the registered user is working fine. Next we have to work on the login user, where the user will be able to log in, and then based on the login we will also have this connect session ID and everything, so that we can also see that. So if I go here and if I go to the cookies, then we don't have any cookies at this moment. Okay, so let's go and let's work on the login part. And for the login we are using the Passport.js for the authentication purpose. So we will also need to create the configuration, which we just saw it on the Passport.js documentation. So let's go to the Passport.js documentation first. I will use the passport.org. Here we will use the passport.local. So I'm going to go here. I will have the passport-local. We go here and we see that we have already installed the passport local, and we have to build a configuration file where we can put this function. And here how we can use it, that okay, let me zoom this. In the login route we can simply use passport.authenticate, and we just provide our strategy. Since it's local, so we will provide the local. All right, and in case of a failure you can just also provide a redirection. So let's do that. I will go back here. I will go to the routes, and in the routes we already have the passport. So here I have to provide the passport middleware. So I will have the passport.authenticate, and here I have to provide my strategy. So our was local. All right, so we have added this, but just by providing this passport.authenticate local, our authentication will not work. We have to create the configuration where we accept the username and the password, and then we have to match the password with the password that is stored in our database. So that's how we authenticate, and this is what we saw in the documentation as well. We have to create this passport.use where we will fetch the username and the password from the user, then find the user, and then we verify the password. So let's do that. So what I will do is I will go back here, and in the config I'm going to create one more passport config file. So let's have a new file. I will have the passport config.js. all right, and in the passport config.js I will have the import passport, then I will also import the strategy. So I will have the strategy from the passport local, give an alias as local strategy. Now since we are going to receive a raw password from the user, we have to match that with our hashed password which is in the database. So I will also need a bcrypt library to compare those passwords. So I will have the import bcrypt from bcrypt.js, and in order to find the user into the database I will also need my model. So let's have the import user from model. So I will have the user.js. Now first we have to use the passport.use, which we can just either copy it from here or we can just write it our own. So I will just copy it from here and put it here, and we will just make the changes here. So passport.use, we are going to use a new instance of our local strategy which is going to accept the username and the password. Now let's say you are using this passport local strategy, but you are going to validate the user based on an email address and a password. So in that case what you have to do is you have to provide an object here. So in this object you will provide the user name field and you provide email address. All right, and then this can be changed to the email. All right, so this is how you will do it, but since in our case we are just using the username, so username is a by default property. We don't have to provide this additional object here. Okay, now once I have this username password, then what I have to do is I'm going to use my try catch block. So let's have the try catch block. All right, and in the try first we have to find the user. So what I will do is I'm going to go here. I will have a constant user, and we have to find the user from our database. So we are going to use the user model dot find one, and in this find one we are going to pass the username, as username is a unique property for us. Okay, since we are using an await, we have to provide an async. So let's have a async here. So I'm going to change this to async, and this is an arrow function. So here we have found the user from our database. Once we have the user, what we will do is, if we don't find a user, so let's say if there is no user, then in that case I will just return. And here you will see that done. It's a very similar. Whenever we create our custom middleware, we have the request, we have the response, and we have the next. So that once you are done with this, you have to do that as a next part. So that's how a very similar done is here. So what I will do is, once we have this, I will do done, and this done is taking first the error. So if there is an error, you pass the error. So in this case, we don't have any error. If you have a user object, then you can just pass the user object, but right now we did not find the user, so this will be a false. And then you can just provide your message. So I will have the message, and here I will have user not found as a response. All right, now if we found the user, then in that case we have to match the password. So if we have is match, this will be equals to the await. We are going to use the bcrypt.compare to compare the passwords. We're going to take the raw password, and this will be the user.password, the password which we have got it from the database. All right, now once this is matched, so if is match is true, then in that case what we will do is we are going to return the done function. So in this, the error will be null, and the user will be the user object which we have got, because the password is matched. Then we will just forward the user object. But if this is not true, then we are going to have the else, and in this we are going to return the done, where we are going to have the null as an error. We don't have a user object, but this time we need to pass a message. So let's have a message, and the message will be incorrect password. And if there is an error, then in that case what we will do is we are going to return our done function with an error. Okay, so this is done. I will just remove all this. Now we don't want all this stuff as we have already returned our function. All right, so this is how it looks like. We have this passport use new local strategy instance where we have the username, password, and we see that, oh, this is wrong, this should be password. So that's why we have an error here. Okay, we have the password, and then we have the user password, and this is done. Now if we want to give a try for this, we can just do that. What we can do is we go to the auth routes. We have passport.authenticate, and we have the local here, and we have this login. So we will just have to write this login function in the auth controller. So let's go to the auth controller, and here what we will do is I'm going to have the console.log, and we can just have the authenticated user is, and we can have the request user. So here we are going to get the request user object, because what we are doing is in the passport, once this is done and everything is authenticated, we are actually forwarding the user. So when we forward the user, we get that user values here. And here what I can do is I can have the response status as 200 because it was a successful authentication. And then here I can define my message, and here will be user logged in successful. So I will have the user logged in successfully, and along with that I will also define the username which has logged in. So I will have the username here, which will be the request user username, and we will also going to pass the is MFA active or not. So I will have the request user dot is MFA active. And so the reason we are passing on the login is MFA active is based on this, we will be able to know that the first part of the authentication is the done, and the second part of the authentication is required. So if the MFA is false, then from the front end side, we are going to call the setup two-factor authentication. And if it is true, that means the two-factor authentication is already set up. We just need to verify the token. So we're going to see it later on when we actually test all our APIs. For now, we will just test the login part. So let's go back here. I'm going to change this to login. And for the login also, we are going to pass the same thing, the username and the password. And let's give a try. So what I will do is I'm going to send the request, and we see an internal error, and that is obvious because we did not included the configurations of the passport config into our index.js. So let's go here. I will have import and we need to have dot slash or maybe dot slash. We go to the config, then we go to the passport config.js. All right. Now if I go and check everything is working fine, let's go here and I will just send a request and we see an internal server error. So let's go and let's see what is wrong. So here you will see that if we go here, we see that we have this failed to serialize user into the session. All right. So when we are using the passport config, so this passport config, we have the particular user which we have found and we have authenticated it. But now in order to put this user and create the session for this user, we have to serialize this user. So for that, what we can do is there are two functions, serialize and deserialize. So that's where passport and the session, they both work hand in hand usually. And we can provide here the passport dot serialize user. Okay, and in the serialize user, what I will do is we are going to have the user and we have the done function. All right, and then what we will do is we just have to use done and we have to pass the null as an error. All right, and then the second one is the ID that we have to pass. Since we already have the user, we also have the user ID, which is the user underscore ID. So this user ID, if we go and check in our database, then we see that we have this underscore ID of the object. So that's where we use this underscore ID. Now we can also go and do a console log here, console.log, and what we will do is we are going to have we are inside serialize user. All right, so that we know that at what time we go into this function. Now with this serialized user, we also have a deserialize of the user. So what I will do is I'm going to copy, put it here. I'm going to change this to deserialize user, and in this deserialize user, we have to pass the ID that we have serialized. So this is the ID we have passed. So I'm going to copy and put the ID here. Okay, once we have this, what I will do is I will have the try catch block, and in this we are inside deserialize user. All right, and here we will just find the user with an ID. So I will have a constant user. I will have a wait user dot find by ID, and we pass the ID in order to identify our user. All right, once we get the user, we are going to call our done function where error will be null and we pass the user object. And if there is an error, we will again have a done function and we just pass the error. So we have done the serialize user and deserialize user. Now let's go and let's give a try. So what I will do is I will go back here, and this time I will send the request again, and we see that the status is 200. And here we can also see that whenever we call it, actually we are inside a serialize user. So this user is serialized here. Okay, now if we go and check our response, if we go and go to the response here, then you see that the user logged in successfully, username was Dipesh, and MFA is not active, it is a false. If I go to the cookies, you will be able to see that since we have serialized the user, we have established a connect session ID, and this is our session ID and the data we have. So that's how we have established the connection and the session. Now since the user is logged in, and we also get the values of the response as the user name and the MFA active, we can go and work on our AuthStatus API, and then we can also work on our Logout API. So let's go to our auth routes. Now since we have the session established, so for every subsequent request that we are going to do from our Thunder client, we are going to forward the cookies as well. And the reason behind is that in the index, if you remember, we have used credential as true. So whenever a request from any of the origin comes, we will also get those cookies. And once we get those cookies, we actually get the user information from there, from the cookies. Okay, so let's go to our controller, or maybe let's go to the route, and we will go and work on the auth status. So in the auth status, we have this function. So let's go to auth controller, and in the auth controller, we have the request and we have the response. So here it will be very simple for us that if we have the request dot user, if that is available, then in that case, we are simply going to have the response status as 200, and then we are going to pass the JSON object as a response, and we are simply going to pass the same thing. So that will show us that, okay, the user is authenticated. All right, but if this is not, then in that case, we are going to have an else part, and then we are going to have a response status as 401, and we are going to have the JSON. So let's have a JSON, and then in the JSON we are going to have the message, and we say unauthorized user. Okay, so we have the unauthorized user, and this is what the status API is going to give us. We can also write the logout at the same time. So for the logout, what we will do is we come here, and then we will here see that if request.user, or maybe I will just simply copy this. So when we are trying to log out, and in that part, if we see that the request is not having the users, that means the user is already not authorized to log out. He's already logged out. So we have this, and if this is not the case, then in that case, what we will do is we are going to have a request. So there is a logout method here. So we are going to use this logout, and then what we will do is if it's a callback function, we are going to have that if it's an error, then in that case we are going to return, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it here. We are going to return 400, and we say that user not logged in. So that means the user is not logged in. So I will have the user not logged in. Okay, but if this is not the case, then in that case we are simply going to have a 200. Okay, the logout is successful, and we're going to have a JSON, and here I'm going to have logout successful. All right, so now we can give a try for these two APIs. Let's go here, and now since we have already logged in, if we want to check the status, we can give a try. So let's have a status, and I'm going to go here, get send. Then you see that unauthorized user, since we have already reset our application because we are working on it. Let's give a try to log in again first. So I will have the login post send, and I see it's a 404 because it's logged in. So I missed the L. I'm going to send the request, and we see that the user logged in. Now let's go and check the status. If we want to check the status, I will go here, make a get, and I will send. Then I see that this is the status of my logged in user. If I want to log out, I can just have a log out. I can create a post API, and I don't want this information, and I click on send. Then you see the logout successful, and whenever you log out successful, you will see that we are into deserialize user. So that's where when you log in, you actually have to serialize the user into the session, and when you log out, you actually have to deserialize the same user from the session. So that's how the login and logout is working. Let's go and let's get the status again. Since we have logged out, we should be getting, because there is no logged in user, we should get unauthorized or something. So we see that we have unauthorized user. So this was the first part of our application where we have did all the setup for the passport. We did the database connectivity. We did the registration of the user. We used the login using the passport local strategy. We have the auth status of the user. We also have a logout feature. This was the first factor authentication. The second part is now start building the second factor authentication, or we say multi-factor authentication. Let's go to the auth routes, and we will start from the 2FA setup first. So for this, the first thing we have to do is these routes, the 2FA setup, verify, and reset, are only accessible to an authenticated user, because we have to check that the first factor authentication is done. If that is done, then only you can access these routes. So we can have a small middleware here. So what I will do is I will have a request response, request response, and next, and this can be an arrow function. I will have a comma here. So this is a small middleware. I'm just writing it in here, and you can also create a separate file and include this middleware. But what I'm going to do here is that if the request has an isAuthenticated, so I will have the isAuthenticated, and if this is true, that means the user is authenticated. I will have return next. That if it's an authenticated, you can just go ahead and set up your two-factor authentication. But if it is not, then in that case, I will have the response status as 401, and then JSON object message, and the message will be unauthorized. All right, so we have this unauthorized, and what I can do is I can just copy this middleware in all my routes. So I will copy here and I will copy here. Okay, so we have it. So that means, I mean, if I try to go and access it now, I will have the request is not authenticated, because if I go and check the status, I'm unauthorized. So even if I go to 2FA / and if I try to do a setup and it's a post, and if I do it, I will get unauthorized because I'm not authorized. If I want to give a try, I can go to my auth controller, and here I can just have a response.json, and I can have message hello world. Okay, let's give a try. I can go here. Let's log in first. So I will go and log in. I need to provide my username page. I will provide the password as 1 2 3 4 5 6, and let's give a try. I'm going to send the request. I see user, the page is logged in successfully. Now if I want to set up a 2FA, so I will have 2FA slash, and here I'm going to have the setup, and it's a post, so I'm going to just remove this. Then I should be able to see the hello world. You see, I see a hello world. But if it's not an authenticated, so let's say we call a logout first. So let's have a logout, and I'm logout, and now if I try to call 2FA slash setup, I will get unauthorized. Okay, so that's how we are just doing it with the help of the small middleware, writing it here. Okay, now since you are already authenticated, you need to set up your 2FA. So let's go to the controller and write the 2FA function. So what I will do is I will start with the try catch block here, and in the try catch block, let's have the error case first. So I'm going to just copy from this. I will copy this, I will put it here. All right, and I will say that if it's an error, so it's better I copy it from the registrar user. So this is good. I'm going to copy. Let's go into FA, put it here. Yeah, if it's an error, then in that case, what I will do is I'm going to have here error setting up 2FA. And then we have the error message. Now, if it's not an error, then in that case, what we will do is first let's have a console.log, and we will have the request.user is. So here we will find all the details of the user in the request user. Now, once we have the request user details, what I will do is I will have a user from my request user. I take the user. Now, after taking the user, we have to create a secret for the multi-factor. So if we go, let's go to npm Speakeasy, and if we want to generate a secret first, so the first part is to generate a secret. We can simply generate a secret like speakeasy.generate secret, and this is going to return an object with a secret ASCII value, the secret hex value, secret base 32, and it also returns the OTP auth URL, which we can just use it and then create a QR tag. Okay, so we are going to follow this step first. So I'm going to copy, we go here and we generate a secret. Now, if we want to log in and check what are the secret object contains, we can just have the console.log, the secret object is, and then we can just log this object. So let's have the secret. Okay, so we have the secret object. Now, once we have the secret object, what I will do is we are going to have the user dot, and if you remember, we had this property on the user object, which was this two-factor secret. So now we are going to assign that value here. Since we have generated a secret, this secret has this value of secret dot base 32. All right, so we have this and we have generated this. Now, if we want to give a try, we can just give a try this, what is the value of this object is. Okay, so what I will do is I will go here. I will first have to log in. Okay, to log in, I will have to give my username, the page, and I will give the password. So let's have the password 123456. Okay, I will send the request. Login is successful. I will just copy and create one more request. This will be 2FA slash setup, and it's a post. All right, I will send the request. Then we get the error setting up 2FA. Okay, that's fine. We go and see the request user is undefined. And if I go and check the status, so I will just copy and I will have the status. Then we see the user is logged in. So it should work. So I will have a 2FA slash setup, and it's a post. Okay, so we get this error. If we go and then I can see that we have this res, it should be a request. All right, and now we can give a try. So first let's me log in. So login successful, and now if I go and send, then we still get an error. That's fine, but here we see that now we have the request.user and we get that user. If we go and see that, then we have the speakeasy.generate secret, which is not getting generated, and the reason is we did not imported it. So let's go and import that first. So I will have import Speakeasy from Speakeasy. Okay, I will also need to import the QR code. So let's have the QR code from QR code, and then I will also need to have my JSON web token. So I will have the import JWT from JSON web token. All right, so I have imported everything what I needed. Now we can give a try. So I will first log in, logged in successful. I will send the request and it will not come anything, but we can go and see here what we get. So here you will see that if I zoom, then you see that this is a secret object. We have the ASCII, we have the hex, base 32 string, and then we have the OTP auth URL. So this is the OTP auth URL. You can eventually store all these, the hex code and everything, but I'm just going to store the base 32 into my two-factor secret. So let's cancel this. I will go here and I will minimize this. Let's go here and I'm going to put this base 32 secret into my two-factor authentication. All right. So once I have this, I will need the same two-factor secret whenever I verify my OTP as well. So after this, what I will do is I will have my user.isMFA active, and now I'm going to set it as true because the MFA is now active, and I will have await user.save. So this is going to save the user into the database with the latest value, and those latest value will be two-factor secret and isMFA as true. All right, so I have saved it, and after saving, what I have to do is I have to generate a URL which is a custom URL. So here if you see that then there is already a URL, but I have to make this as a customized URL. So what I can do is I will have the URL here. This is equals to speakeasy.OTP URL, and in this I can just pass some customized values. Let's say I want to pass the username. When I scan the QR tag, I know that okay, this is the user. So I will have an object here, and in this object I can just pass all the values. So first let's pass the secret. I have the secret dot base 32. Then I can also pass the label. So for the label I will just pass my username, so whoever the user is logged in and is setting up the MFA. So I will have the request user username. Okay, then I can also pass the issuer who is issuing this. So I have the issuer, and the issuer will be maybe malvia.com. Okay, so I can just pass the issuer name here, and at last we need to have the encoding. So I will have the encoding as base 32. Okay, so we have this URL. Now we have to pass this URL into the QR code so that it can generate an image or a base 64 string. So I have this QR code library dot, and this is having two data URL. So you have just passed the URL here. So I'm going to pass the URL, and let's have a constant here. So I have a constant QR image URL is equals to await. Okay, now once this is generated, I can just pass the response. So I will have the response status as 200. MFA is set up dot JSON, and in the JSON what I will pass is I will pass the secret. If you don't want to pass secret, you don't pass it, but I can just passing a secret in case you want it, but it's not recommended. So I will have the secret dot base 32, and the other value which I want is I will pass the QR code, and I can have the QR image URL. All right, so now if you want to give a try after setting this up, let's give a try. So what I will do is I'm going to go here. I will log in. So user is logged in. Let's set up the MFA. I'm going to send the request, and you see that we have this secret. Now along with this secret, we also have this QR code base 64 string. Now I will just copy this base 64 string, and then we will just use it. So I will just copy the base 64 string. All right. Now if I go here and I type base 64 string to an image, let's try this one. I will just put the, and you see that as soon as I put it, it generates a QR tag, and this QR tag actually contains the values. So if I want to scan this, what we can do is I'm using this extension, which is the authenticator. So I'm going to click here, and you see that this is the authenticator. I will just remove all the old one. So I'm going to remove. Okay, now I have nothing. Okay, and this is basically a Chrome extension for authenticator. So maybe have this one. So this one you can just simply download it and put it into your Chrome extension. Yeah, for testing purpose. So now I have this one. What I will do is I will click here. I will click on, and I will just scan my QR code. So I will scan this QR code, and as soon as I scan it, you see that the page has been added. And if I click OK, and if we go here, then you will see that this is the issuer www.depagemalware.com, and then you have the username, and then you get this OTP. Now you need to take this OTP and then you verify. So that's how you do the second factor authentication. So right now we don't have a verify API. So let's write that API first so that we can verify. So I will go back to Visual Studio Code. Let's go to the controller and let's work on the verify. All right, so now in the verify, what we will do is first let's have the token, and we get this token from the request body. Once we have the token, what we will do is we are also going to get the user, which is in the request user, because all these endpoints are authenticated. So we will always have the user from the session. Now, if we want to verify, what I will do is I will have the verified, and we will use the same speakeasy dot .TOTP function, which is the time-based OTP function, and this has .verify. So we want to verify it, and we have to pass few values here. So first value will be the secret, and this secret will be the secret which we have it in our database, that is the two-factor secret. Okay, that's why we store it in the database. Next one will be the encoding. We use the encoding as 32, so we pass the same 32, and then we pass the token. All right, now if this is verified, so what I will do is, if this is true and if it's verified, then I will pass my JWT token to the user so that user can use it for further access of the APIs in the project. Okay, so I will have the JWT token is equals to JWT dot sign, and we can pass the username as user.username. Okay, and then we will also need to provide the JWT secret which we have added in our env. So let's get that. So I will have the process.env.jwt underscore secret. Okay, so we have this, and now we can also define the expiry time of our token. So I will go here, I will have the expires in, and we will use 1 hour. So we got the JWT token. Now once we got the JWT token, we can just give this token to the user as a response. So I will have the response status 200.json. We will have the message, and here I will have 2FA successful, and then give the token, and the token value will be the JWT token. Okay, but if this is not the case, then we have to give the response in the else. So if it's not okay, then we have the response status as 400, because user is giving us a wrong token. So that's why we will have an invalid 2FA token. So let's have a message, and in that case I will have invalid 2FA token. All right, so we are going to test this, but before testing this, what I will do is I will just quickly write the reset function as well. As we already know, if we want to do a reset, the first part we do is we change this MFA active as false, and we just remove the value in the two-factor secret. Okay, so we go here, and here what I will do is I will simply have the try catch block. In the error I will have the response status as 500.json, and we are going to define the JSON error. This will be error resetting 2FA, and second one will be message, and we are going to define the message as error. But if this is not the case, then we have to reset it. So what I will do is I'm going to take the user first. This user will be coming from request user. All right, and on this user we will first do the user two-factor secret. We will make it as an empty, and on this we will have the user is MFA, and we make it as false. All right, once we do this, we have to save the user. So I will have the user dot save, and then we can just give the response back. So I will have the response status 200, and then we're going to have the JSON message, and let's have the message as 2FA reset successfully. So I will have the successful copy and put it here. So we have the reset 2FA successful. We have also returned the reset and the verify. Let's go and let's check for the verify. So what I will do is I will go here. I will have to log in the user first. So log in. Once the user is logged in, the MFA is true. So we can just reset it. So what I will do is I'm going to go here and I will click on reset and send. And you can see that 2FA reset successful. If I go again here, and if I want to have a status, so let's have a status and let's change this to get. I will send it. Then you see that the user is logged in successfully. We are already logged in, and our is MFA active is false. So that means we can set up again. So I'm going to click here. I will send, and we get this base64 string. So let's copy the base64 string. I'm going to copy, go to the browser, and first I will just remove my old one. So let's remove the old one. Okay, I'm going to clear this, and we put our new base64 string, and we get this new QR code. Now we can go here, and I will just scan this QR code. So I'm going to scan the QR code here. Okay, the page has been added. So I'm going to click OK, and we see that we have this OTP. Now I can just copy this OTP, and if I go here and instead of the setup, I'm going to use verify. Okay, I will go to the body. In the body, I'm going to use token, and I'm going to pass my token value. I will send the request, and you see that invalid MFA token. If I go back and I take the new token, okay, I'm going to send. Then you see that 2FA is successful, and you will see that we have this JWT token, which we can just use it. If we go and check the status, it's MFA false, but since we have set up, now we should get it as true. So this is how you will see that we have established the user session. We have validated the user with the username and a password. Then we have also checked the status of the user, and then we have set up the 2FA. So this is a Thunder client I'm using. We can just go and try it on the Postman. So I will open a Postman and I will create a new user on that. This is a new user. Let's create it. So what I will do is I'm going to copy this. I will put it here and I'm going to first register a user. So let's have register. I'm going to change this to post. I will go to the body and then we can just have a username. So let's have a username as Nikesh. Okay, I'm going to send the request and we see the user registered successfully. If we go and verify in the MongoDB, then we should be able to see. So if I go to the browser, I refresh it, then now we see that we have two users. We have Nikesh and the MFA is false. Let's activate that. So I will go back here. I will go here and I will first have to log in the user. So log in, send, and we see the user is logged in, is MFA active is false. So now if I also want to see the cookies, so I can go to the cookies and here you will see that we have this one cookie, which is the connect session ID and everything. So we have established a session here. Now what we will do is I will go here and set up. So I'm going to click on send. And you see that we have a new secret and this is a new, if I just copy, let's go to the browser. I will go to the browser. I will just remove everything. I will put it here and we see that we have an error. So I will have to remove the other part of the response. So let's remove that. Now after removing, I get a new QR code. Now let's scan this. So I will go here. I will click here and now I will just scan the QR code. And you see that Nikesh has been added. So we see that we have here two users. One is Dipesh, one is Nikesh. And let's say if I try to validate from Dipesh OTP into the Nikesh, so what happens? So it should not work. So what I will do is I will just copy. I will go here. I will use verify. Go to the body. I will remove everything. I will use token. I will use the token value and post and I will send. Then you see that invalid MFA. And that is true. This is what is expected because we are using a token from some other user. Let's go and let's get the token from Nikesh. So I will just wait until I get a new token. Okay, now I get a new token. I'm going to copy and I'm going to use it here. All right, now I'm going to send. Then you see that this is now successful. Similarly, if I want to do a verify for the page as well, I can just take a token for the page and put it here and I can send. And I see that I have two users who have logged in two different clients and they both have different session established. So that's how you can actually create this multi-factor authentication, and which is so cool project because there is a lot of things we can learn here. So maybe we will take a pause here. We have completely built the backend part of our multi-factor authentication. We have all our APIs ready. We have also tested our APIs from different clients like a Thunder client or a Postman. So I hope you enjoyed the project. If you like the video, a thumbs up is appreciated. You can also connect with me via Facebook or Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter for latest updates. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. Thank you. Thanks for watching.